across the globe that we could implement in this province so that we could better the lives of our traditional leaders. I also called on the COGTA Portfolio Committee to go and research and report back to this committee. That was one of our resolutions, to report back to this committee of ideas across the globe that we as a portfolio committee could look at and decide which we could explore so that we could better the lives of our traditional leaders in this province. So I think it's very disingenuous and unfair to say that I do not have a vested interest in the well-being and welfare of the traditional leaders. And I'm glad, MEC, that you actually read that statement out, because I feel as though perhaps the timing of the statement may not have been proper. We could have probably waited for our meeting. But the content, I think, was very balanced, because what we do not want is we do not want to start something and then leave our traditional leaders in the lurch because we don't have budget or we are unclear about the process. And something that came up, we discovered from the media that I think it was the FSCA that released a statement that they had not approved a pension fund. So there's a lot of lack of clarity surrounding the issue. And of course, you've committed to answering those questions. That is why in the statement, I put out that you will answer those questions. You've committed. You've made a commitment to the portfolio committee that you will be transparent and give us the necessary information that we require. And so I think that, honorable members, we have to remind ourselves, many of you here have come out now and said, you know, your party distances itself from the statement. But my understanding is that when we sit as a portfolio committee, we are not sitting as DA, as IFP, as ANC or MK. We are sitting as a group that is performing our oversight duties. And we have a responsibility to those who put us here to perform our oversight duties well. And so for the last year or so, I have been releasing statements and speaking on behalf of this portfolio committee. And there has been no issue because I am empowered to do so. However, there is an issue with this because it is a sensitive matter. And so I have noted the comments of the Honorable MEC, and I've noted the comments of the Honorable members. And of course, going forward, those comments will be taken into consideration. But I want to emphasize that this was simply performing our oversight duties. And unfortunately, we have a hard task. We've got to ask the difficult questions. That is our job. We've got to ask the difficult questions, which may not always make us popular. And so I want to just implore us to remember that as we're moving into the various items. Now, I also want to remind the portfolio committee that there are various instances where we have circulated information to you of work that I've done outside the portfolio committee, which I am empowered to do. So I want you to just remember something. As much as our Honorable MEC has said that the traditional leaders have taken this very personally and they are extremely upset, I want to emphatically say that I am willing to meet with traditional leaders and explain the ideas that we have that can change their lives, that can take them from just receiving a stipend and a pension where they are reliant on government 100% to unlocking wealth for the future. Those are the ideas that we have, ideas that can change their lives totally. The land that they have has wealth that can be unlocked. And those are the ideas that I'd like to bring to the table for our traditional leaders. So having said that, I also, coming back to what I was saying, I want to remind honorable members and also to the honorable MEC that as much as the traditional leaders, you say, have become upset by the statement, and like I said, I'm willing to explain to them, there are a number of traditional leaders across the province that write to me, that engage with me on a daily basis with regards to issues that they have in their various areas, issues that we have put forward to the department to deal with, complaints that have come to us that we've taken to you, and some we have referred to the Premier's office as well. So it's not that we are not engaging and that we do not care for the traditional leaders. And as the chairperson of this portfolio committee, if I had no vested interest in the welfare of the Amakhosi, I would not even entertain those letters that are sent to me, those phone calls, those WhatsApp messages. I would not entertain them if I did not have a vested interest in their well-being. So a lot goes on behind the scenes that are not part of the portfolio committee. But of course, we inform you once those matters have been resolved. Very recently, I was at the Seniors Parliament in the Ugu district, and the department official that was with me will remember there was a complaint of a traditional leader that had been in position for 20 years and was just said there's no longer a job, you're no longer in the position. And I was very emphatic. I said, this issue needs to be resolved. Please take the matter up. And I need feedback on the matter because we need to provide feedback. So I'm saying all of this, honorable members, to make the statement that I have a vested interest in the well-being of traditional leadership and am willing to pitch my ideas to them, ideas that we as a portfolio committee, we as the KZN legislature can carry forward in order to transform, not just improve, but transform the lives of our traditional leaders in this province. We've also discussed, when we discussed our budgets, whether National Treasury can take on paying for the traditional leaders in this province. So we've been talking about a lot of ideas surrounding the traditional leaders and how we can improve their lives. And I want us to, as much as we are in disagreement regarding that statement that went out, I want to encourage you to go back and read it. This time without any emotion, but read what is in there and try to look at the positives that are in that statement. Positives that we can build on and move forward as a portfolio committee and spread that message that this portfolio committee, not the DA, not the MK, not the IFP, not the ANC or any other party, but this portfolio committee has a vested interest that in our term, we would like to change the lives of traditional leaders. We would like to make some sort of positive impact and leave them in a better place than we found them when we joined this portfolio committee. I want to encourage each of you to build on that, to, in spite of our differences, try and appreciate the ideas, each idea that comes to the table, and try to look at how we can do things differently for them, because we have an obligation to make their lives better. Not just the ordinary residents of this province, but we have an obligation to make their lives better because they serve us and they deserve a better life. So, having said that, I'm not even discouraged today because iron sharpens iron. We need to hold each other accountable. And if we disagree with each other, it's not a bad thing. We grow when we disagree with each other. We grow when we do not tick boxes. We grow and we come up with better ideas when we explore better ways to do things. So, Honorable MEC, your comments are noted. And please do accept my sincere apologies. I have the greatest respect for yourself. And going forward, I'd like to work on building on this relationship so that we understand where you're coming from, because I do understand it's a very sensitive issue to you. We'd like to build on this, and we'd like to move forward in a positive manner going forward in this regard. So, members, if there are no more questions or comments, all right, I'm going to give opportunity because I can understand that it is a very sensitive issue. There's two. Are there any on the virtual platform? None. All right. We're going to give you a chance, Honorable Kunene, then Honorable Ngadi, and then we're going to move on to the, have we got Honorable Basiela again, or is that our old hand? Okay. So we've got 3 honorable members, and then we're going to... All right, I've noted that, Honorable Basiela. Yeah. And we've got Honorable Madlopa as well. So let's start with Honorable Kunene, Honorable Ngadi, Honorable Basiela, and then we will give Honorable Madlopa an opportunity. Thank you, Honorable Kunene, over to you.
I was saying, Honorable Chairperson, I think some of the comments that you made cannot be left unchallenged. I think when you form part of the portfolio committee, would not object when what you say we agree with, but when you will say things that we don't agree with, we'll have to objection. Particularly on this issue, we have a concern that your views did not represent us as the committee. And hence, that is why we're distancing ourselves. And you must just know that you are a chair of a committee of people who represent constituencies. And we can't defend the statement in our constituencies that we come from. As a result, that is why we are distancing ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Ngicela ukuvumelana noMtimande, Honorable Mtimande, I agree with him. Mhlamba Chair, maybe we're gonna you will need to understand as to the issues of protocols of Amakhosi. I think that one is very important. And also understand the issue eyokuthi inkosi uma uzoba inkosi ukuqala kuphi, because inkosi is different to what you think inkosi should be, because I was a bit skeptic when you mentioned that you saw one of inkosi in the Ugu and was reporting to you, and inkosi said no, you were worried that inkosi hasn't got a job, this and that, and we are getting like so deep on these issues. Hlalo, mina my plea, let's stick on the agenda and deal with matters of the day. Otherwise, if you're gonna keep on engaging on the utterances that you are busy, also ulobo uzbalula for Amakhosi, I don't think umhlangano will end up deteriorating. That is my plea, because there are a lot of bottlenecks that needs to be replaced that you have also already made, Honorable Chairperson. With due respect, let's proceed with matters of the day. Then we'll have an opportunity to engage, because yes, there are matters, but let's get an opportunity on engaging those matters in a correct way, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ngadi. Let's just give those 2 other members, because I've already taken their hands. Honorable Basiela and then Honorable Madlopa. Then we're going to move along with our agenda.
Chair, just following up on your statement, just a comment, and I think this is what we need to understand, that we in the portfolio committee need to know, especially in COGTA, that the right to elected leadership as well as the right to traditional leadership is what we defend. It is not. It doesn't have anything to do with our party. but it's got to do with what we're here to do and our oversight role. So, and my comments the comments I made earlier had to do with we have to really look at the rights of the traditional leaders, or the right of the electorate to governance by traditional leaders. Thank you.
Honorable Madlopa.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. We appreciate your comments to say that you apologized on the issues that was raised. I want to say we understand that the chairperson is the spokesperson of a committee. However, the difference here is that what the chairperson deliberated on or raised in the statement are the issues that were not discussed because they were postponed. The chairperson, when she or he becomes a spokesperson of a committee, he raised issues that were raised in the portfolio committee on behalf of the members of the committee. But on the issues that we have not yet deliberated on, is not something that can be raised in a statement and said it's raised by the portfolio committee before the portfolio committee deliberated on those particular matters. So I think the mistake was there to say that whilst we appreciate that the chairperson is a spokesperson of a committee, but the matters that was raised are the matters that we all agreed in the portfolio committee that are going to be postponed until the Honorable MEC come and the department come and present those issues in the presence of the MEC. Maybe that the mistake that we are raising, we know that we have been issuing the statement and so on, but the statement that is issued are the views that came out in the deliberations in the committee, and then the chair, when finalizing, will be taken those particular matters out. So that's why we are saying that we appreciate that the chair is our spokesperson, but however, spokesperson after we have deliberated on the matters. Thank you so much, Chair. I think we must continue on the agenda. I agree with Honorable Mngadi, because even in the beginning, I was thinking that we are going to follow the agenda and then raise those issues together with what has been presented by the officials of the department. Thanks, Chair.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Madlopa, for that. And members, I appreciate all of the input that you've made, and I take note of those comments. So I think what I want to propose, I agree with Honorable Ngadi that we need to move along. But I felt as though that, members had this on their hearts, and I wanted to give you opportunity to speak. I didn't want to stifle you. So you have made input. I've noted your comments regarding the statement, and I think what we will do is release a follow-up statement. And in that regard, before that follow-up statement is issued, I will share it with the portfolio committee members. And if you are in approval, then we will release that statement. I think that is the fair thing to do in this regard. Let's move along. We're going to move along to our first item on the item of business, which is the Amakhosi Pension Fund and the Amakhosi verification. So I'm going to hand over to the department to present to us very briefly. Just give us an overview, because we want to give more opportunity to members to ask questions in this regard. Because remember, we did have the verification tabled at our last meeting, and we deferred it to this. So members have had an opportunity to look at that presentation. It's just that the pension fund was the new item. So just a very short overview. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members. I'm not sure, Chairperson, if you would like to start with 6.1 or 6.2. Okay, yeah, I will then hand over 6.1 to DDG and the officials to respond to 6.1, and I will come in at 6.2.
Thank you. Thank you, MSC. Thank you, honorable members of the committee. In respect of Izinduna verification and payment process, very briefly, as advised by the chair, we will just wish to report that the verification process, the monthly one, continues, but we have had an opportunity since July, ending last week on the 31st, an opportunity to visit all Amakhosi in KwaZulu-Natal in all districts to verify and confirm the population of their Izindunas. We had an opportunity to meet each and every Inkosi. We brought along our services unit and shared with each and every Inkosi map showing their jurisdiction and how it is subdivided into Isikoti. We then had an opportunity to update those maps and link each Isikoti to a particular Induna. That gave us an opportunity to update the database of all Izinduna in the province. We were able to fill the vacancies of all Izindunas that will have been stuck in the process because they get submitted in bits and pieces as the vacancies occur due to natural attrition. That means those who get diseased, but there are also others who got very old and then they retire. And there is a category of those who transgress the cultural transgression and the rules of the Amakhosi and who then get removed. Those take a bit longer because we have to subject them to a process to give them an opportunity to make representations through the MEC, who then considers the case and the matters put by Inkosi, and the MEC makes a recommendation to the Premier in respect of the case brought by Inkosi prosecuting Induna and Induna's representation to the MEC defending themselves. The MEC then makes a recommendation to the Premier in Cabinet. So that is where we are with respect to that part of the traditional leadership cohort. So we now, as a result of these roadshows, have a new and fresh population register, if honorable members may, of all these Induna in the province. That will allow us to now maintain a new clean record, recently verified, of this cohort of traditional leaders. But what we have also introduced is that to limit problems in the future, there's going to be a very strict regime to change this register now, so that it is kept that very neat and strictest of integrity. The removal and additions to this list will only be effected by signature between Inkosi and the DDG of Traditional Affairs to keep the register with minimum changes so that there is a single database and change the database, which will then influence what we maintain on the test. As a result of this activity, we have been able to replace and cabinet has approved appointments to fill vacancies caused by natural attrition, mostly death. Cabinet has already approved 36 replacements of new Izinduna, and the premier plans to give them their recognition certificates in the next few weeks. We are also taking a second batch because that batch that went through involves the first 3 districts that we visited. We know now that we are putting through to cabinet a second batch of the midway, a group of districts that were visited to cabinet. We're putting through 59 or 60 Izinduna in the next cabinet sitting. It's been approved by the MEC for submission to cabinet. Then there will be the last batch during the last 30% of the districts that we, from midway through the ones we did last week, which will also entail a particular number of Izinduna. So that's where we are with this report. Thank you for the chair. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. Members, this is your opportunity to ask questions of clarity. There are any comments? Let's just see on the virtual platform. Are there any questions or comments regarding the verification process? Okay, we've got Honorable Ngadi, Honorable Madlopa. And I'm closing this round. All right, Honorable Ngadi, go for it.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Sibonge kakhulu nge-report that talks to verification of Izinduna. We really appreciate that. Now, mine, I just want to, it's only that mhlambe voice yenze ukuthi ngingezwa kahle with regards to the terminology that seeks to say are waiting for official recognition. I wanted to get a clarity on that one as to what does that mean. But with due respect, Honorable Chair, there is a matter which I just want, because fortunately we have MEC before us. The matter, it talks about the suspension of Izinduna zawanobamba. I'm not sure whether the MEC or the department will be in a position to give us just a small version of the decision as to what transpired. I'm sure I might be overlapping, but to the report that is before us, but that is my appeal. But if it's not an opportunity to respond on that matter, I will accept it, Honorable MEC. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ngadi. Honorable Madlopa. Is she no longer? Honorable Madlopa, do you have a question?
Honorable Chair, no, thank you very much for the report. And also, again, appreciate the opportunity that the MEC is giving us, because we want to raise some of the issues. And I request that maybe be given an opportunity to raise all the questions, because I may be leaving after that, because the MEC said all the issues that was pertaining to the traditional leadership, we must raise it in this particular meeting. That's why I'm appreciating that his presence. Chair, I think I want to check, Honorable Chair. There are issues that are of sensitive issues and issues that are in the communities for different traditional leadership. I want to raise because I want to know how the MEC is dealing with those particular matters. The first one is the issue of Kwangenecheni, Nkandla area. There are ongoing tensions between three Amakhosi there regarding the land boundaries. And this dispute has escalated to the point where Izinduna are affected, creating leadership uncertainty and at a local level. The other one, Chair, is at Amakhosi area. Maybe if the MEC can share with us what he knows about these areas that one is raising. Again, also there are tensions there regarding, I think it's two Amakhosi there. I'm not going to raise their names here, but there are three Amakhosi that are in conflict over traditional jurisdiction and authority in this area. And this contestation threatens peace and stability among local household and traditional councils. The third one that I want to raise is delays in regard to inauguration of Amakhosi. I do have I think the Amakhosi that I know that I can make an example with are three. They are awaiting their official inaugurations. The process has been unreasonably slow, leaving communities without clear, legitimate leadership. The fourth one is in regard to the land claim conflict in ENdumeni, Nongoma, between Amakhosi that are contesting land in ENdumeni. And this dispute has created uncertainty for residents and threatens the escalate if it is unresolved. The last one is outstanding inaugurations of Inkosi Ntombela, which is still awaiting for finalization of inaugurations, but it's part of the inauguration, Honorable Chair, that is outstanding. And Inkosi Ndlangamandla, whose recognition letter dates back in 2010, even before the MEC comes here, appointed. It remains in limbo after more than a decade, you know. These long standing delays erode confidence in government's ability to respect and manage traditional leadership matters. Chair, I want to raise these questions, Chair, as a recommendation. I think, why has COGTA allowed the inauguration of recognized Amakhosi to be delayed for such prolonged periods? In some cases, more than a decade. What concrete steps is the department taking to resolve land boundary disputes between traditional leaders, particularly in Kwangenecheni and Mangosuthu or Amakhosi? How is COGTA supporting Izinduna who are caught in the middle of these disputes? And what measures are in place to prevent disruption to their work? What timelines and accountability measures has the department set to finalize the outstanding inaugurations of Amakhosi such as Inkosi Ntombela, Inkosi Ndlangamandla? How does COGTA intend to strengthen its mediation and dispute resolution capacity, to ensure that traditional leaders' conflicts do not destabilize service delivery or social cohesion. Given the department is now under the IFP leadership, what assurance can be provided that decisions are being taken in the interest of all communities, not political convenience? Last one, Honorable Chair, is in regard to the presentation that we have been given regarding Izinduna and the process. We appreciate that the process for identification is very clear to follow. But I want to check, there has been in the media where Izinduna were identified and installed only to find that His Majesty was saying that these were wrong Izinduna. If that one that we saw in the media is correct, but what measures of accountability to those people that are installing the wrong Izinduna? Because that one has got a possibility of creating violence in the area if we are not really following the process to the T. And what assurance can the Honorable MEC give us to say that this thing will not happen again? This also goes to Inkosi that was identified and the matter taken to court to say that this is not the rightful Inkosi that has been identified by COGTA. And the family is not supporting that one. And it is known that, let me make an example. They said Ibamba, there was Ibamba. And after Ibamba, they identified the son of Ibamba instead of taking Amakhosi to the rightful house there. If the MEC can share with us, why was that happening? What consequence measures is being done to those people that identified wrong, did not follow the right process in identifying that particular Inkosi? Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Honorable MEC, for affording us the opportunity to ask these questions to you. Thanks.
I see your hand, Honorable. All right, go for it.
Thank you, MEC. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I just want to know in that verification which were conducted, if UMzimkhulu briefing, the verification was conducted. Why I'm saying that? Because UMzimkhulu was incorporated into KwaZulu-Natal. Before that, those Izinduna, they were disregarded by the former Transkei government as Izinduna, and they became Amakhosi for themselves. They regarded themselves as Amakhosi after 10, 15, 20 to 30 years. And they were not considered as Izinduna when they were incorporated in KwaZulu-Natal. And they were not getting any salary, any pay, but they were playing the role of Izinduna properly. I just want to know if those who are no longer Izinduna, they were considered, I mean those who are being removed as Izinduna now, and those who are currently Izinduna, they are considered in their salaries or in their back pay. That's what I was asking. Thank you.
Honorable, there are no other members on the platform. Honorable Basiela, you've got a hand up.
Yes,
Honorable
Chair.
Basiela?
Yes, Chair,
All right.
can you hear me? Yes, thank you.
Please
Thank you,
proceed.
Chair, thank you for recognizing me. And to the MECs, thank you for being here. And this question or this input really is because you are present. The question I want to ask is the timeline. What is the timeline of recognition from application to it being granted and verified or through the verification process? I'm wanting to ask the timeline because there is there are applications that are pending in the COGTA area for recognition of headmen and chiefs in King Cox area of traditional leadership. The application for the Griquas are dragging on, and there is a perception by the people in his area of governance and or by himself that there is a deliberate dragging of the process. And they feel that there's also a perception that because they have interests in, not interests, they were the original and the first citizens. And so the forestation in the hands of Hans Marensky, Mondi, and Sappi are really the areas over which there is a disputed land claim. The land claim as well has been too long drawn out. There were irregular refusals of land claims, which are now being taken up on review or appeal. So this is, so the question of timeline. So when one does oversight, how do we answer the king as well as the other local leaders, which they refer to as headmen or headwomen? What timeline are we looking at? At what point do we say maybe we have to intervene, or at what point do we say it is irregularly long? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Basiela, honorable members, I've indulged you and taken a second round, but I want to just please appeal to you. If there are questions relating to the presentation and questions that can be answered, by all means, ask them. But when they are very detailed, I think the MEC will agree with me, you need to put them down with the full details on paper and send those questions to the department so that you are able to get proper answers to those questions. But I'm going to hand over to Honorable MEC or the department to respond now.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Maybe let me start with Honorable Umgadi with regards to the Izinduna and the process. Because in terms of the law, Induna is appointed by Inkosi. That is the only way someone can become an Induna, is appointed by Inkosi. And either the Induna resigns, becomes a vacancy, or passes away, or violates the code of conduct. So there are two ways for a vacancy to happen. It's either through death, resignation, or Induna is terminated when he or she has violated the code of conduct. Now, there are many Izinduna where Amakhosi have written to say Induna so-and-so has violated the code of conduct, and the procedure is that Induna must be given a hearing, appoints a presiding officer, hears the version of Induna, hears the version of Inkosi, and then makes a ruling. In many instances, Inkosi and Induna can be reconciled and there's no need for attention. But in some instances, the relationship has irretrievably broken down, and on the way of the evidence, then Induna is terminated. And I think those are the ones now which cause a bit of conflict because they feel that they were unjustly terminated. But just as DDGBL has said, so far, there are 141 Izinduna which have been verified who have either passed away or resigned. And out of the 141, 36 have been gazetted by the Premier. Because once COGTA has done the verification, it then goes to the Premier for the Premier to issue the certificate. And it is our view that by the end of October, another 60 would have passed through the system, and then the remainder. So there is no point where Induna can just be dismissed without a process, the disciplinary process taking place. In many instances where Induna have been dismissed is because he is part of the people fighting against the cause. Let me make an example. Induna is not allowed to sell land. The instances where Izinduna are selling land, that's a violation of the code of conduct. There are instances where Izinduna are mistreating members of the public, not allowing them to bury their loved ones, and a lot of other unlawful instructions which Izinduna are doing. And that is when then they start on the disciplinary process. In the case of KwaNobamba, Nobamba is a unique case, just like KwaJama, where that area belongs to His Majesty the King. So in those areas which are part of the land of His Majesty, he then appoints someone called Isolesino, who then governs that area. So KwaNobamba, there's a dispute to say the area under Isolesino, the Ntombela clan also feels that it is their area. So that matter has now been referred to the royal family to mediate in that issue. And we will await the mediation process. Because what COGTA has is that in the whole province, we have mapped Izikoti, and they come up to about 3,600. So you can't have Induna which is floating, not attached to Izikoti. And there a solution, because those Izinduna which have been gazetted now have been gazetted under Ntombela clan, and Nobamba feels that that area was supposed to be under them. Honorable Madlopa has raised quite a few issues. The first one is a dispute between three Amakhosi. Inkosi yaKwaNgenetsheni, Wakhambi, Inkosi uZondo, and Inkosi uXulu. Inkosi uZondo arbitrarily is just putting Izinduna on the land belonging to KwaNgenetsheni and on the land belonging to Inkosi uXulu. So he has been cautioned, and even criminal cases have been opened against Inkosi uZondo, because what he is doing is unlawful and is causing conflict, because those areas under the map do not belong to him, but he is putting Izinduna on top of Izinduna which are already existing, and that is causing conflict. And I think as COGTA, if he does not desist, we will be forced to act against Inkosi uZondo, even recommending his derecognition as Inkosi, because his behavior is causing a conflict on the ground. Amakhosi area, one is not aware of the specifics. Maybe we would request the honorable member to give us more information. The inauguration of Amakhosi, before Inkosi is inaugurated by His Majesty, needs to go through a process called ukuthela kwamanzi, which then precedes the actual inauguration of Inkosi. So when we came to COGTA, there was a long backlog, both of ukuthela kwamanzi and the inauguration list. And unfortunately, in terms of the act, it's only ISILO which can perform that function. So in the last financial year, we were able only to perform one inauguration of Inkosi Yasembongobongweni in Zululand. And then we've performed more than 12 ukuthela kwamanzi of Amakhosi, which then make them to be in line for inauguration. The next Inkosi, which we will do within this financial year, the next in line is Inkosi Ngobo from Ugu district. And we are hoping to secure a date because all the processes have been performed. Inkosi Ntombela is also on the list of Amakhosi to be inaugurated, but he has to first perform ukuthela kwamanzi ceremony. And we do hope that before the end of the year, he can perform that ceremony, which will then prepare for his inauguration as Inkosi. Inkosi Dlangamandla from Pongolo, Zululand. Unfortunately, the premier at the time was Premier Willis Mthunu, who wrote a letter to Mr. Dlangamandla to say he agrees with the recommendations of the commission to say Dlangamandla should be Inkosi. But then the premier did not take the next step of actually recognizing him as Inkosi. It was just a letter to say, I agree with the recommendations. So the Dlangamandla from 2010 has never been recognized by government as Inkosi. The only Dlangamandla which is Inkosi is Dlangamandla Nyandeni, who is there. But the one which Honorable Madlopa is referring to was never recognized by government as Inkosi. And the letter which he has does not constitute a recognition. It was just an agreement with the recommendations of the commission. But then cabinet did not take the next step. Honorable Madlopa raises the issue of Ibamba, whose son has been recognized as Inkosi. And I think she's referring to the case of Inkosi Mdletshe, because there is a view that says Inkosi B.N. Mdletshe was Ibamba, which means regent. Whereas in fact, he was not Ibamba. He was recognized as Inkosi in his own right. And that was done by the late King, His Majesty King Zwelithini. Because the king would not go to do an inauguration of Ibamba. He will do the inauguration of Inkosi. So then there is a faction in the family which feels that Inkosi Mdletshe, who is our former speaker in the legislature, was Ibamba. Now, the judge which was looking at the case issued a ruling in 2021 that cabinet was wrong to de-recognize Inkosi Mdletshe, and that all his powers and functions as Inkosi should be returned to him. This was 20, but unfortunately that court ruling was never implemented. by cabinet. So why we have recognized the son of Nkosi Mdletshe is based on that court ruling to say his father was reinstated by the court. So we have de-recognized the one who was there. He has gone to court, and we will wait for the final outcome of the court on that issue. But as far as COGTA is concerned, the son of Nkosi Mdletshe, which is Magabongwe, is the duly recognized Nkosi of the Mdletshe clan. And in these decisions, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, COGTA is not persuaded by any political motivation, but is based on customary law. And that is what COGTA uses to ensure that the correct person is identified as Nkosi. Now, the biggest problem becomes people who call themselves Amakhosi, whereas they are not, which is against the law. You have people even calling themselves kings, Isilo, in KZN. We are dealing with a case in Ilembe by some gentleman of Mthethwa who is calling himself Isilo. Now I've written to him to say he should desist from doing that because the law only recognizes one Isilo in KwaZulu-Natal, Act 5 of 2005. There is no other king in KZN. The Nhlapo Commission opened an opportunity, ventilated, and all the applications that were put in did not succeed. Only one king is recognized in KZN. So it becomes very dangerous when other people refer to themselves as kings. The Provincial House of Khoisan and traditional leaders is there so that Honorable Basiela, the Griquas, can be represented in the decision making, but they don't attend meetings of the House. So we would encourage our colleagues in Kokstad who have genuine grievances to attend meetings of the Provincial House of Khoisan and traditional leaders because they are accommodated there. There is no separate house for Griquas, no separate house for Khoisan, is one provincial house where all matters of traditional leadership are being addressed. Therefore, we do urge those people who call themselves kings, we have a duty, even as members of this house, to caution them not to do that because it sows confusion in the minds of the people. And then lastly, Honorable Xaba has raised the issue of UMzimkhulu, which is very tragic because ever since UMzimkhulu came to KwaZulu-Natal in 2006, not a single Induna was remunerated. Up until today, they're not getting any remuneration, which is unfair because while they were part of the Eastern Cape, they were getting something. But when they came to KwaZulu-Natal, then those benefits were stopped. So for the past 9 months, we've then engaged on a process to go to all 4 Amakhosi in UMzimkhulu, Jozana, Msingaphansi, Foto, I forget the 4th one, where we have then been able to count how many Izinduna genuinely are under Amakhosi of UMzimkhulu. And in the process, unfortunately, we have had to reduce the number in some areas because you would find that Isikoti in UMzimkhulu is from here to the street. Another Isikoti is a very small area. So we've had to rationalize that so that it corresponds with the maps. But then in UMzimkhulu, we are now going to cabinet as COGTA to propose the recognition of a new Inkosi under Mvulamhle, under the House of Matsegana in the Bata nation. Because that land, even the place UMzimkhulu was the palace of Matsegana. So if you look at the area, the size of Mvulamhle, and you look at how they've been operating, they do qualify that the head of that land should be recognized as Inkosi. The issue of the boundaries, which were also raised by Honorable Basiela, really the boundaries and the disputes and the land claims are not dealt with by COGTA, but they're dealt with by the Department of Land Affairs and Rural Development. So if there are any land claims, we would be happy to assist and support, but the final decision does not rest with us, but rests with the Department of Land Affairs. The land claim issue raised by Honorable Madlopa in ENdumeni, again, it is the land belonging to Abathetwa. That is the land belonging to Inkosi uMthetho. But unfortunately, then you've got people coming to claim that land as their own, to the extent that they even tried to persuade a member of the Mthetho family to put a claim against Inkosi, so that Inkosi is not recognized as Inkosi. So it's a very clear, and transparent matter. That land belongs to the Mthetho clan. And all those who are trying to claim it as their own, historically and otherwise, they don't have a legitimate claim to that land. Thank you very much, Chairperson. If there are any issues I've left out, maybe the COGTA senior officials can assist me.
Thank you, Honorable MEC. Are there any further feedback?
Chair,
All right.
maybe a follow-up to me, Chair, on the Honorable MEC.
You've got a follow-up, Honorable Madlopa?
Yes, Chair. No, thank you very much, Honorable MEC, for your responses to our question. But I want to check, Inkosi, that you said he received a letter of, agreeing with the recommendations, and at the moment is not yet recognized. But what measures is the department having to assist that particular tribe? Because if it can be left unattended, maybe it will cause, conflict and dissatisfaction, around those particular areas. We may find someone may be coming back to say that, no, I'm now Inkosi because the first one was not recognized. And I agree with you, Honorable MEC, it has taken long. But now that we are here, what is it that the department is going to do to assist that particular Inkosi? And the other one that I did not hear the response is the Indunas that were identified and confirmed. And then at a later stage, His Majesty said these were wrong Indunas. I know that it has been rectified, but my question was to say, how come that there is a wrong identification when there is a clear process that has been outlined to us to say this is a process, and the MEC has correctly indicated that it is Inkosi that identify that particular Induna. But how come that we ended up having the wrong Izinduna that were recognized rather than the one that it was raised by His Majesty that, no, this is the wrong one? Thanks, Honorable Chair.
All right, members. We've got a long agenda, but I can see there's so many questions in this regard. Can I just, I'll give you an opportunity now, and then can we agree that we will just cover the Amakhosi Legacy Plan presentation today? And if we do have a few minutes, we'll do the UMzinyathi District Municipality and defer the next items to the next meeting that we will have. Because I can see that members want to properly engage on this topic, and I don't want to stifle you because the MEC has availed himself specifically for this item today. Over to you, Honorable Kaba.
Thanks, Honorable. Thanks, MEC, Honorable MEC. I'm sure I'm covered in that area of UMzimkhulu, and I'm happy for that. Kwamatsigane to UMzimkhulu. I know you were there during the funeral. You have got all the information there what is happening. But in Matsigane, they are divided into two. There is a Matsigane at UMzimkhulu, there is other Matsigane at Ipulwa. That Matsigane, they have been more than 38 years without inkosi. That area, I'm sure maybe that it has came to your attention previously. I just want to know what is happening, because that one is where the headquarters in Lunkulu Kamatsigane ikhona. Le engapa ePula, then there is other one, the one which we were talking about. I just want to know how far are you with that one, sir? Thank you, Honorable MEC.
Right, over to you to respond, Honorable MEC.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe to respond to Honorable Madlopa, you know, our hands are tied for the Dlangamandla issue because it's a 2010 matter, and we do not know why the cabinet at the time did not recognize Nkosi uNdlangamandla. And it's very difficult for us now, 15 years later, to try and see what the reasons are, because this is now the 7th administration. So really there's not much we can do to help Mr. Ndlangamandla. Maybe he can try also the legal route to assist him. If maybe we can get the details of Izinduna, which the honorable member is referring to, where she says, His Majesty said they were the wrong Izinduna. Maybe if we can get more detail so that we can come closer to that issue. Honorable Klaba, Madzagane, from our records, the great house of Madzagane is at Nogweja, at Ikopo, where Inkosi MSI Zulu is the one. And then the one under Pulwa is affiliated to Msingaphansi. That's the second house of Madzagane, where Inkosi is there as we speak at Msingaphansi. Affiliated, that is where Pulwa affiliates to. And then this is the third one, Mfulamhle, which we are going to recognize. So the one at Pulwa does not qualify to be an independent, you know, clan, because already out of their house, Inkosi yaseMsingaphansi is already there and is presiding as Inkosi. But if the honorable member has more information, we are very open to accept that information, to be guided so that we see how we can get to the truth as the honorable member is explaining, because just now we are seized with UMzimkhulu, and it will help us to get as much information so that we don't make the wrong decisions. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Honorable MEC, we now come to the item of the Amakhosi Legacy Plan presentation. If you could take about 10 minutes, just to give us a broad overview, and then we'll allow members to ask questions so you can directly respond to those questions. I think it's over to you, Dr. Joey Krishnan. Will you be presenting? Okay. Over to you, Honorable MEC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I will just make brief remarks and then maybe allow Dr. Joey Krishnan to take the portfolio committee through, as she was driving this process to ensure that whatever happens complies with the law and is also financially sustainable in the long term. We were hoping that the portfolio committee, as a preamble, would applaud COGTA for cancelling the office lease in Pietermaritzburg, because that shows that we are saving the little resources that government has, because cancelling that lease has been able to save the department 72 million rand over the next 3 years. So those funds have been ring-fenced because they were budgeted for over the medium-term expenditure framework for the hiring of office space. So we've redirected those funds. And Amakhosi are classified as public representatives in terms of the TKLA, which is the national legislation. That is why their remuneration and benefits are gazetted by the president, just as the president does with all political office bearers and members of the judiciary. But beyond that, Section 212 of the Constitution then allows provinces to make their own legislation with regards to traditional leadership. And that is what KZN has done. The KZN Traditional Leadership and Governance Act, Act 5 of 2005, went beyond the national legislation. So I'm starting with the legislation, Honorable Chairperson, so that we locate Amakhosi correctly, to say that they are not being done a favor when anything accrues to them, but that they are classified as office bearers. The only difference is that members of parliament are elected every 5 years, but Amakhosi are born into these positions. That is why the Municipal Structures Act allows for Amakhosi to participate in the municipal councils, because they are part of the office bearers. So when we arrived at the department was spending a lot of money on funerals of Amakhosi. A case in point, Inkosi Amabhata in UMzimkhulu passed away, and the family came to say they have no funeral cover. So they are requesting the department to foot the cost of the funeral, including all the logistics. And they said, well, they estimate about 2,000 people. Well, on the day, 6,000 people arrived for the funeral. And I'm just quoting one example. But every other week, there is a request to cover funerals. And the Audit General raised there to say, this constant expenditure on funerals, why is the COGTA department incurring that? Secondly, Amakhosi were told that they belong to a medical scheme called GEMS. But each time they want to access the private hospital, GEMS does not approve. Each time they want medication, GEMS does not approve. To the extent that Nkosi Sibakade Mchunu passed away in the queue in a government hospital in UMzinyathi because he could no longer afford to pay cash for the medical expenses in a private hospital. The third point which we discovered is that many Amakhosi have served as public representatives as Amakhosi, but when they feel that they are no longer fit and suitable and want to hand over to the next generation, they can't do that because there is no provision for their retirement. A case in point is Nkosi Mashabane in Umkhanyakude. He is 102 years old now. His son is 68. So he has gone back to the position and demanded it back because he has nothing to sustain himself with. And he said to his son, no, he's taking back the position. Because he thought when he was handing over to his son, correctly so, he was no longer feeling able to perform the functions. He thought government will give him something every month. And it was zero. The whole salary went to the son. And there are many instances where Amakhosi are no longer willing to do the job because of medical reasons, but they are forced to stay in because there's no pension as you would have for public representatives, as you would have for councillors. Because for members of parliament, you have the political office bearers pension fund, which is administered by Alexander Forbes. And for members of the public service, they join the government employees pension fund. So they are covered. Members of parliament belong to a medical aid scheme. They are covered. So with all these problems in mind, we then devised what is called the Amakhosi legacy plan with the assistance of the provincial banker at the time, Standard Bank, to say these are the three legs of Amakhosi legacy plan: is the pension fund when Amakhosi wishes to retire at 65, is the medical aid, and is the funeral cover, so that the department can stop paying these unbudgeted for funeral expenses. And then we started then on a process, firstly to consult Amakhosi to say, is it something that they need? And we have been able to undertake 19 roadshows throughout the length and breadth of the province. Because the need that we identified is that not only Amakhosi, but Izinduna also then expressed a strong need for the pension fund. Standard Bank, using their entity called Liberty, but Liberty is the underwriter, then came up with a pension fund for Amakhosi and Izinduna, which would meet the requirements of COGTA. To say that there would be a portion every month that is deducted from the salary of Nkosi or Induna, and COGTA as the employer will also contribute a portion to this pension fund. Now, I have requested that the document be distributed to members of the portfolio committee, because I think in passing, the Honorable Chairperson referred to the Financial Services Conduct Authority. And on the 7th of October, UMzinyathi, on behalf of Standard Bank, wrote a letter to COGTA, subject being confirmation of the registration of the KZN COGTA Pension Fund. This letter serves as confirmation that a pension fund has been registered for Amakhosi and Izinduna of KZN COGTA in terms of the Pensions Fund Act 24 of 1956 and Income Tax Act 58 of 1962, Special Rules, Corporate Selection, Umbrella, Pension Fund, Cooperative Governance, and Traditional Affairs, KZN. Please note that the fund is registered under the name Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, KZN. There is the fund registration number and the date of registration. And attached to that is a letter from the Financial Services Conduct Authority to the principal officer of the Corporate Selection Umbrella Pension Fund, which is Liberty, which is the company now which is administering the pension fund on behalf of Amakhosi. The letter is dated 2 September, dear sir. Pension Funds Act 24 of 1956 and Income Tax Act 58 of 1962. Your letter of 22 August refers. I enclose a copy of the special rules duly registered in terms of Section 12(4) of the Pension Funds Act. The participating employer, which is COGTA, is also approved in terms of Section 1 of the Income Tax Act, signed by Gloria Siletele, who is the manager for retirement fund supervision. So these are the issues from a compliance point of view, which then assure the portfolio committee that this pension fund that we are doing is not a pie in the sky. The Financial Services Conduct Authority has looked at the viability of the fund. They've looked at the long-term sustainability and looked also at the lawful aspects of the fund. So that is the first leg. I think Dr. Krishnan will get into the details of how much will COGTA be paying and how much will each Nkosi be paying deducted from Nkosi. Secondly, Amakhosi will then now be part of the Bonitas medical aid, which allows them access to any private hospital in the country and gives them access of services which they currently do not have, like specialists and the medical checkups, access to the ambulance services, and the last leg is the step is giving funeral cover to Amakhosi and Izinduna. When Nkosi passes away, this 150,000 to COGTA to ensure that the funeral arrangements of Nkosi and the family are taken care of. If Induna passes away within 24 hours, 90,000 will be released. So all these millions we have been spending on funerals is now catered for. Amakhosi and Izinduna, that will be deducted from their salaries, the funeral cover. We have looked at the sustainability of this program so that we do not start something and do not sustain it. And going forward, every financial year, we will budget for this program so that Amakhosi are part of it. We have presented to National COGTA last week, Friday. They are very excited about this program. Umalanga province is already knocking to see how they can piggyback of what over what KZN has done for Amakhosi. So we are using our own funds. We have reprioritized funds as a department. We have cut out many events which Amakhosi were doing and we were funding so that we reprioritize funds to this core program. We have cut out a lease in Pietermaritzburg at the Southern Life Plaza. We were paying more than 2 million rand a month as a department for years and years with no value for money. Those employees have now been accommodated at Natalia building in Pietermaritzburg, also at Wadley House in Pietermaritzburg. So there is no train smash there. So we believe that this program restores the dignity of Amakhosi, but also in terms of compliance, meets the threshold of what we would require from a program of this size. So with your permission, Chairperson, maybe let me hand over to Dr. Krishnan so that she can go into the detailed aspects of this program. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson of the COGTA Portfolio Committee, members of the Portfolio Committee, Honourable MEC, and all of the colleagues. I think the MEC has given quite a bit of background, but at a technical level, we want to give assurance that we followed all the relevant procedures, that we did all the necessary investigations and research in arriving at this particular legacy plan. Honourable members, it was not a trade-off between municipalities and the institution of traditional leaders. We did not compromise on our service delivery in municipalities. We continued funding our LED and water programs to the value of 90 million rand, 90, and the contribution then to the institution of traditional leadership on our budget for this particular program will be a maximum of 19 million rand per annum. As the MEC has said, the lease at Southern Life was just under 24 million rand per annum, and that already is a savings that accrues to the department, which can immediately fund the program. So there is definitely no shortfall. There's no additional funding requirements. In fact, the MEC has responded to Honourable MEC Rogers in response to a letter we received regarding the spending pressures. So this does not place additional spending pressures on the department itself. We did previously at the Portfolio Committee highlight the fact that in our view, the remuneration of public office bearers ought to be carried through from national treasury directly. And yet COGTA has had to fund that and carry that forward. And we implore the Portfolio Committee to consider the institutional leadership as office bearers to make sure that there is a narrative to pursue. So our contribution to improving the lives of traditional leadership through the legacy plan is fairly small. Just to indicate also, you know, in government, you have a cleaner at level 3 or a driver at level 4, and they have to be members of GEMS. And Amakhosi and Izinduna don't have that luxury. They did ask to be part of medical aid, Amakhosi, and about 35 Amakhosi had already elected medical aids before we commenced this program. So 35 is more than 10% of Amakhosi were already starting to contribute to medical aids on their own. And in those instances, they still were falling within the rules of government in terms of the contribution. So they elected a medical aid, they were placed onto the PERSAL system, and the department was paying its contribution. as government towards those medical aids. So those were the 35 that were already in place. And when we looked at it, we saw that it was actually quite costly medical aids that Amakhosi had taken up. And when we projected, we said we may well get into trouble if all Amakhosi take up that type of medical aid. We then looked and explored options for medical aid and pension funds for Amakhosi, and we really looked at the parliamentary medical aids and pension funds, and they were not able to join that. Also, we looked at the GEPF, and because they're designated as public office bearers, we also could not successfully get them onto the GEPF in terms of the rules and regulations of the Government Employees Pension Fund. The call and the request came from Amakhosi themselves to say that they need to be able to plan for the future as well. And as the MEC has said, we also needed to, as an institution, allow the opportunity for succession whilst Amakhosi are able to then retire effectively. So on that basis, we looked at what processes we needed to follow to promote this pension fund and medical aid. We looked at the legislation, and there was clearly a gap in the legislation. There's no law that says this is what will accrue to Amakhosi and what will not. So the law doesn't preclude this process that we have undertaken. We have had extensive consultations nationally and with various stakeholders in the matter. And in looking into it, we then we had two options. One was to appoint an agent to act on behalf of the department, whom we would have probably had to pay an agency fee to explore options and look at the feasibility and so on. And the other option was to then utilize the provincial banker. And that we did then at no cost, because as a registered financial services provider, they are able to provide various options to us. So the Standard Bank then looked at the various options. We must say that they explored options for pension, they explored options for medical aid, and they explored options for funeral cover. And on the pension side, what's interesting is that we got Standard Bank to give us a plan that is underwritten by Liberty Life. And interestingly enough, they lifted the retirement age because we said the institution is different. Technically, Amakhosi will not retire fully because it is still their responsibility to maintain the family and to maintain the clan. But they then allowed us to take a retirement age of 75. So we all must retire at 65, and the retirement age is then 75 because we were starting to experience challenges on Persal with queries coming through from the Auditor General as to why some Amakhosi who are above 65 are still on Persal. And that was the lack of understanding of how the institution of traditional leadership actually works, and the fact that these are office bearers that we're dealing with and not employees of the state. And we spent great lengths explaining to the Auditor General that we're not dealing with the employees of the state in this context. So we have a pension fund then that with a retirement age of 75 years. And then part of that, well, the contribution to the retirement will be 13% by the department and 7.5% by Inkosi. And in this regard, it is based on the existing processes and pensions that the department is managing. So it's not different, non-different from what we do in relation to the staff itself. On the medical aid side, on slide number 6, we have medical health insurance. As I said, some Amakhosi had already captured or taken up medical aids. We didn't all automatically go to Bonitas, although Bonitas had an offer that they had done for certain Amakhosi. The banker assisted us to get options from various medical aids. So they looked at Discovery Health, they looked at Momentum Life, and then they also looked at Bonitas. And of course, we had at that time discounted gems. So we looked at different options for medical aid. And under medical aid, then it was Bonitas that came with the best option and the most cost-effective option for both Amakhosi and for the department. Also, the benefits that they then provided, as the MEC has said, was far better than some of the benefits that were offered by GEMS or any of the other medical aids. So they have hospital cover for all prescribed minimum benefit conditions, 27 conditions. And in fact, they've added a 28th condition for depression. And that then is the cover they will get, and they have access to all private hospitals under the cover. They also have certain care programs and screening and so on that will take place as part of the medical aid. The contributions are exactly the same as they are in government, 75% contribution by the department, 25% contribution medical aid by Nkosi himself. The funeral cover, as the MEC said, we were inundated with paying for funerals of Amakhosi that were passing on, and the minimum costs really were around 120,000 Rand a time that we had to pay for each funeral that would have to be held. And in this instance, we are not as a department contributing to any funeral cover. The funeral cover is directly paid by Nkosi, and it is fairly cheap. It's 243 Rand per month. And the member, if Nkosi passes away, then as the MEC indicated, 150,000 Rand will be paid immediately to cover the costs of the funeral. There's also spousal cover. If the spouse passes away, there'll be a 50,000 Rand payment. If any child over than 14 years old passes away, there will be another 50,000 Rand contribution. And children younger than 6 years old, there will be a 15,000 Rand contribution. In all of these instances, the medical aid, as well as the funeral cover, there is no waiting period for Amakhosi. So the medical aids even waived the waiting period. You would know that under normal circumstances, if anybody takes a new medical aid,
right.
It's a 3-month
I'm going to stop you there for the sake of time. Unfortunately, our meeting is supposed to end at past, and it's almost 20 past now. So I want to give opportunity to the members to ask some questions, and then you can come in there, you know, and cover whatever you've left out. Perhaps it'll get answered during questions. Members, I think we've got an understanding of what the pension fund is about. This is your opportunity to ask questions or make some comments. Let's take some hands. Honorable Ngadi, Honorable Legit, Honorable Kunene. Members, we're not going to be able to take a second round. Honorable Basiela. Right, we'll give you a second bite if you still need to.
No, thanks, Honorable Chairperson. Okwami nje kunye nje sihlalo siye sithi ngesintu into enhle iyanconywa. Into nje mangabe inhle kumele sincomeni. Because kuyaqala nje ngengelele ukuthi kube nohlelo olufana nalolu. Ngithi angiregister ngesintu sakithi lesi. Kuyaqala okushuthi ke lo kuyothi even noma usuyikhehla nawe ube nelegacy ukuthi ngize ungqongqoshe waka COGTA kodwa ikhona into engayenza eyayingenziwa ngabanye. Siyabonga kakhulu lokho MEC. We really appreciate that. Uma kuhanjwa-ke, there will be glitches there and there, but we appreciate what the starting point is good. But lago nama bottlenecks there and there, you will fix it as we move forward, of which we really appreciate that. Mhlawumbe kuyi-one engizocela uku-assisteka kuyona in adding on the legacy of Amakhosi. I remember when the Premier was doing his SOPA, he raised the issue of the security of Amakhosi in installing cameras endlini zezondlunkulu. I just want to check ukuthi leyo process yona, is it how far is it in terms of that, because nakhona kwakusijabulisa ukuthi at least a department, they are looking at the issue of Amakhosi and taking it very serious. But in the section 81, we debate MEC, because ikona ama gaps with regards to into section 81 of the Local Government Structures Act. A provision that allowed the Amakhosi to participate kuma matters proceedings kuma councils. Kukhona la kushoda khona, because we don't want to see Amakhosi as spectators of society ekuyona, because yiwona Amakhosi esiwarigada kakhulu rather than amakhansela ekuyiwona alendozana avotela umphathi. Ngicabanga ukuthi-ke kufanele distinguish the two in terms of taking Amakhosi on a very serious note when it comes to municipal council issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, so I have a few questions. The first is Standard Bank being paid to manage the pension fund or for the work they've done in securing this legacy plan? And how much are they being paid to do this? Why was Standard Bank selected? Was a proper procurement process followed? Was there a competitive bid? If you could just, I think, outline that. Then the registered company, Amakhosi Wealth Management, who actually registered that? Was it Standard Bank or whom? So is it a company created by COGTA or is it a vehicle of Standard Bank? Then how does this fund differ from a normal pension fund? Or is it rather the same, a set of criteria and circumstances? And then in terms of the funeral plan, have the Amakhosi agreed to pay this from their stipend every month, or do they believe this is a cost that's going to be paid by the department? Then the presentation had said that 100% of the funds required for this legacy plan would come from reprioritization from the lease from the offices, etc. So is this the long-term funding model that you will then be using? You won't be requesting in the next, financial term for additional amounts to pay for the pension plan, the legacy plan. Then also, were the provincial and national treasury consulted in terms of putting this plan into action and in terms of the legalities, bringing it on board beforehand? Yes, that's it. Thank you so much.
Nene?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable MEC. No, on our side, we are fully appreciative of the table. It is clear that it has been thoroughly thought through. It goes a long way to restore the dignity of Amakhosi or traditional leaders, which the IFP has always stood for. In fact, in terms of the participation in councils, the IFP had always said the constitution must be amended so that Amakhosi are given more powers. So the recognition of traditional leaders is really a very important aspect which we support. So the fact that Amakhosi are public office bearers, clearly, as the Dr. Krishnan was saying, will lend our support in terms of lobbying that nationally there must be an allocation so that the provinces get a breathing space. But it is commendable that we did not have to wait for that. There was a local initiative which the province took in order to ensure that something happens. As in the presentation, Amakhosi said already in terms of medical aid, we're having their because I also imagine all of us cannot barely survive without any medical support and can barely survive without any pension benefits when we finish playing our roles in terms of leadership. So we support the presentation and appreciate that the department has identified savings. Clearly, 72 million rand for 3 years in terms of Southern Life building, and the officials were placed in different offices, Natal and others, and the long-term effects, that is not just a short-term, something that will collapse, dealing with the provincial banker, because I also had a question in mind in terms of why Standard Bank. We were informed that Standard Bank is a banker of the province, so it was easy to then talk to someone we bank with to say, can you offer? Because we give you so many millions. I don't know, in 5 years it's even trillions that we give you, Standard Bank. In turn, because the economies of scale, we are giving you so much money. What can you give to us back as we could kind of understand it as a corporate social responsibility? So it was a wise move to have actually contacted the Standard Bank, and I don't think that other banks would be as competitive as Standard Bank was, because they are not our banker. So for me, all the T's have been crossed and the dots have been put. We are supportive and appreciative, Honorable MC, of the leadership you provided. We thank the officials for the technical legwork that they did. All systems go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kunene. Honorable Basiela.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, MEC. I hope I'm not belaboring this point too much, but I want to say that in many monarchies all over the world, they do not pay pensions because those kings, queens, and other leaders own the land, they own the harbors, they own the roads, they own the rails, and on all of those things exist industry, and a lot of revenue comes in. And so a kind of a royalty income is paid over to the king, the queen, and the other leaders. And this is one that goes to the heirs. So you don't have to bring a fresh pension fund application for a son of a chief or an Amakhosi or a king, because it's in perpetuity. And the only reason why we don't have this is the Amakhosi were forcefully removed from the land that they ruled over, and from the particularly parts, the lands which have got a lot of wealth, like the mines and the harbors, the roads, etc. So they should be, it's a suggestion, and it's the proposal that I made earlier, that the low-hanging fruits within this dispensation can be located in things like the kind of royalty or a levy from the harbors, from the mines, from the forestry and other areas. Then there is a question of electricity. With the rates or the unit per kilowatt hour for residents and industry is different. Industry pays half the amount as residents. This again is inverted. In other countries, industries pay double what residents pay. So if this can be rectified, I know we're looking at other areas, but it is a low-hanging fruit. It is absolutely ridiculous that agreements were made with people like Richards Bay Minerals to pay less than what a pensioner or poor person has to pay for electricity. So as a low-hanging fruit, in a very short period of time, that rates can be correctly levied on industry, and the amount of income that you'd get from there can be made available so that we do much, much better. While we appreciate the presentation, we appreciate the technical input that was given, and we appreciate greatly the cancellation of the Southern Life lease agreement, it is not enough. The amounts that are paid to Izinduna and Amakhosi really is an insult to the role that they would have had it not been for apartheid and the forced removals. I thank you, Chair.
For those contributions, honorable members. And then finally, before you respond, one of the questions that I have, how are the Amakhosi's contributions going to be safeguarded in this arrangement? And just please confirm, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. So the department will be paying 75% and the traditional leaders will be paying 25%. And then also perhaps just indicate to us how the Liberty group was selected as well, so we have an understanding in that regard. And I think that after you've responded, one of the resolutions that we can record today is that you provide for us the written agreements between the department and COGTA and Liberty Life, and the breakdown of exactly how the pension works so that the department can have an understanding of what the legalities are and what the actual arrangement is. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Over to you, NEC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I will be very brief and then hand over to Dr. Krishnan. I think what we must move from, honorable members, the premise is that the Department of COGTA is grossly underfunded as a department. If you look at what the department has to do in terms of legislation and expectation, and you look at the allocation, it's grossly underfunded. The portfolio committee would know just at a cursory glance, the greater portion as we speak. So we do need to open that discussion at the level of the portfolio committee to say, given what COGTA has to do in terms of disaster management, oversight of municipalities, coordination of all government departments, and coordination of traditional leadership, is this budget enough? And it is not enough. But let me start with Honorable Mngadi to appreciate the sentiments and also to say that we do agree with Honorable Mngadi that Section 81 does not give the proper courtesy and respect to Amakhosi. And we do look forward to the recommendations and suggestions coming from the portfolio committee as to how we can better enhance the capacity of Amakhosi to do their work. Moving to Honorable Lidget, you know, COGTA is not a unit of the provincial treasury. The provincial treasury is a department on its own. COGTA is a department on its own. There is nothing in law which says whatever program we do must be subject to the approval of provincial treasury. We do work with provincial treasury from time to time on many aspects, but certainly we do not need the approval of provincial treasury for COGTA to conduct its own programs. This is a program squarely in line with Program 4 of COGTA. Provincial Treasury has raised their concerns, and part of the concerns also is, I think, a lack of understanding of the role of traditional leadership and the place it occupies in society. So we certainly do work with Provincial Treasury, but we do not need the approval of Provincial Treasury to roll out this plan. What is important is that the Portfolio Committee of COGTA, as the oversight structure, must be satisfied that this program complies with the law, and two, that it is financially sustainable going forward. Therefore, all other questions with regards to Standard Bank, I will hand over to Dr. Krishnan. This is a normal pension fund. It's not a special pension fund. It's a normal pension fund where the employer and the employee both contribute, as happens with all pension funds. We do appreciate the sentiments expressed by Honorable Lukunene in support of the program of Amakhosi. Honorable Bashiela raises a very important issue about levy from the land. And in our case as KwaZulu-Natal, we have the Ngonyama Trust, and therefore on issues of land, we have to work closely with Ngonyama Trust. And then finally, the questions raised by the Honorable Chairperson, how safe are the funds? That is why we do not work through a middleman and work through a reputable financial services provider, which is Standard Bank, because that guarantees that the funds are safeguarded. Liberty is a part of Standard Bank. So they are the underwriters, which gives an extra layer of assurance because they deal with pension funds on a daily basis. So that to us gives us the assurance that the funds are safe. Unlike a fly-by-night arrangement where we would work through a broker. Some people would work through a broker. We are dealing directly with the financial services provider so that we exclude the cost of a broker. I'm not sure, Chairperson, we will have to find out because, you know, these agreements between Liberty, Standard Bank, and COGTA pertain to the personal details of Amakhosi. Now, we must ensure that we protect the confidentiality of Amakhosi and the confidentiality of the agreements because it's between Inkosi and Liberty directly. So I don't know to what extent we can make those agreements available to the portfolio committee without violating the confidentiality aspect. I remember that as a councillor, I was once a councillor. When you get the document from the municipal fund, municipal councillors pension fund. It's written confidential because no one else is allowed to see that agreement, even the municipal manager. And even as members of parliament, when we receive the pension fund statement, it's marked confidential. No one else is allowed to see that because it's the business between the member and the pension fund. So I do appreciate that the chairperson wants to see the agreements, but we would have to check first that they don't violate the confidentiality aspect. But from where we are sitting, we are satisfied that the law has been complied with in reaching these agreements.
Thank you very much, honourable members, and thank you, MEC. I won't repeat those issues covered by the MEC. I think just to deal with the specific issues, we did not pay Standard Bank a cent for the work that they undertook for us. As indicated, if we were going to appoint a broker to do this, then we would have had to institute some procurement process. So that was not necessary. Also, COGTA is registered as with both the Financial Services Conduct Authority and in relation to the Pensions Fund. As the accounting officer at the time, I had to sign all documents on behalf of Amakhosi and in the name of COGTA to set it up. Also, as indicated by the MEC, it is a normal pension fund. The funeral plan, Amakhosi are very aware that the 243 Rand contribution that they will make for the funeral plan will be a direct deduction of their payroll. In fact, when we went out on the roadshow for Amakhosi, we gave them template payslips to say, if you take up the pension fund, this is what it would look like. If you took the medical aid, this is what your payslip would look like. This would be your contribution, the deductions, the payover, and included therein was if you took the funeral plan, then you would pay an additional 243. In fact, we went to the point of even looking at the scenarios on the tax implications. And we gave template pay slips to Amakhosi so that they fully understood the implications of the plan from a financial point of view. The long-term funding model, I think we have covered it in terms of it is currently internal funding by the department. And even if we stick to the existing baseline of the department, then the plan will be funded going forward. So we will not get to a point where we would not, as a department, responsibly budget for the program. It is something that is now institutionalized. I think the MEC has responded in relation to the consultation with National and Provincial Treasury. Safe to say that during the budget process, these priorities are part of the departmental budget. I think perhaps it was an instance of the Treasury not having sight because we would have done it in an adjustment budget process, which would follow now. So the details will, and in fact, we did receive communication from the MEC for Finance, which as indicated, the MEC had responded to. In terms of Southern Life long-term plan, you will not see us coming back to you for funding for the same people that we have removed and replaced from Southern Life. Public Works have reduced the space norms for all government officials. In fact, we should be looking at all departments in terms of reducing the space that they are occupying, particularly if they are leasing buildings. So a director's space might have been 20 square meters. Now it's down to 16 square meters. So the additional, that concertina effect will enable us to then have staff in the buildings that we currently have, sharing offices, hot desking, and so on. And so we have been very innovative in managing this particular process, and our staff are comfortable. We are busy packing boxes, and this is also part of the service delivery model of COGTA as we decentralize our services not to have such a big center at Southern Life. I'll not respond to the issues raised by Honorable Basiela. I think those were comments and inputs. How is it safeguarded? We are governed by the rules of the financial services boards. As indicated, Standard Bank as the registered financial services provider is also governed by those. They would hold the security in terms of this particular programs, and the medical aids would carry it in relation to the medical aid scheme. That would be Bonitas. The contribution for medical aid is 75%. For pension fund, it is 13% on the part of the employer and 7.5% on the part of the employee. So it differs for the medical aid and the pension fund. The underwriters, generally, there's no choice. Even if I took a medical aid, I won't have choice as to who that underwriter would be, because the financial services providers would even change underwriters from time to time. And even in your personal insurances and pensions, you would get told the underwriter has changed. So it depends what, in terms of the financial rules and regulations governing these matters, will apply. And so there's no direct relationship between Liberty Group per se and the department. We have the approval as indicated from the Financial Services Conduct Authority, which gives us the formal registration numbers and so on, and secures our investment with these particular providers. The legal agreements, as indicated, we have signed as COGTA our part, and then Amakhosi will individually sign as well. And I think, Chairperson, we are confident that we have technically, legally, financially, and otherwise ensured full compliance in all of these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Krishnan. I think let me just do an overview of certain issues that were not covered and certain issues that need to be responded to. With regards to the selection of Standard Bank, are you saying that no other bank was given opportunity, that Standard Bank was approached? That's one. Secondly, when it comes to the request to see the documents and the arrangement, I don't think we require any information, personal information of any traditional leader, so those can be redacted. Or literally, we want to see the arrangement between the Department of COGTA and Standard Bank, not individual traditional leaders. So that is one. And then the clarity that is required, because obviously this is new to members as well. This is dealing with finance. Did the Department of COGTA register with the FSCA, the Amakhosi Wealth Management Pty Limited? Is that what you are talking about when you say that you had to sign? Because we're unclear about that statement, because now you provided a letter from Standard Bank, which is giving us a little bit of a different angle to look at. And you've given us this letter from the FSCA addressed to the Liberty Life Group. So we don't know how that part falls into this arrangement. So if you could respond to that. And then, of course, you know, like I said earlier, it's not something we disagree with, because they do, in fact, need benefits. But I would like to also say that that discussion we had about National Treasury taking on the traditional leaders, payment of traditional leaders' salaries and benefits, I think it's something that needs to be explored. And it would be appreciated if, feedback could be provided to this committee going forward in regards to those talks and how they are going, how they are, being rolled out and what progress is being made, because it will be beneficial in the long run. Also, the other concern for myself that I would like to raise is, we understand that when we discuss the budget of this portfolio committee, and I agree 100% with the MEC, that the budget for COGTA is inadequate. Because when you look at it and you look at the amount of work that needs to be done, one would agree that the budget is insufficient. And you look at the other departments and the exorbitant budgets that they receive, one asks the question, why is COGTA not receiving more money? And you did appeal to us at that budget committee meeting to really, as members, lobby on behalf of the department for more funding. And we also took note that it was 2 million that COGTA had to give up towards health. So our concern, or my concern rather, would be for the long run, whether this is sustainable. And we appreciate that the Department of COGTA has made savings in terms of your lease agreements over the next 3 years. But what happens in 5 years and in 10 years and in 20 years? What happens if there are further austerity measures and the budget for the Department of COGTA is further cut? What happens then? What is the plan? So if you could just respond to that. I mean, I know it's a loaded question and it's something that needs to be given some thought to, but that is a concern. What would happen to the pension fund? How would we let down the traditional leaders in that regard? So it's a question that needs to be asked. If you could respond to that. And members, if you have any follow-ups, we're going to bring the meeting to a close. Are there any follow-ups on the virtual platform? If you could just check. Because this is your last bite at this. All right, we'll give you an opportunity, Honorable Legit. And that would be the last person. If you could respond, or shall we take your question first? Would you like to respond? All right, let's take the question and then we will get a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Just in response to something that the Honourable MEC mentioned about not having to seek concurrence or review from Provincial Treasury, it is in fact stated in the PFMA that any new financial commitment, benefit or compensation scheme that has recurrent fiscal implications, even if paid from the department's own vote, requires Provincial Treasury concurrence or review. And that's PFMA section 18.2F. So just a correction on that. Thank you. So why was Provincial Treasury's guidance not sought on this issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Legit. If you could respond.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, and for the questions and comments raised by the honourable members. I think Section 82 of the PFMA speaks about concurrence, which is very good, and that is why we discussed with Provincial Treasury. But there's a difference between concurrence and approval. What I said is that you don't require the approval of Provincial Treasury. But certainly in terms of consultation and concurrence, there's been a long process of discussing with Provincial Treasury and giving them the requirements that they need. So we are satisfied that we have complied with the prescripts of the PFMA. There is no department that is paid directly whose wages or salaries are paid for directly by National Treasury. Every provincial department must make an allowance in their baseline for their own compensation of employees. Whether it's Department of Education, it comes off the provincial budget, Department of Health, and all other departments. So it is with the Department of COGTA. We cannot expect National Treasury to assume the role of paying for Amakhosi. We must factor that into our own budgeting as a department, because the Constitution places the requirement and onus of Amakhosi on COGTA. There is no other department that can cater for and provide for Amakhosi, except COGTA. So we have to take from our budget and ring fence for COGTA. So I thought that is very important. What happens if there are further austerity measures? How will we pay for the pension fund of government employees? What happens if there are austerity measures? How will we pay for the pension fund of members of? So if there are further austerity measures, we would have to cut down on our programs to ensure that the pension fund becomes sustainable. So there will never arise a situation where the pension fund will not be sustainable, because we will factor it into every annual budget and into every MTF budget. It's going to be there, just as we have factored in the salaries of Amakhosi and Izinduna.
Thanks very much. I think just on the issue of Standard Bank, as we indicated, we directly approached Standard Bank as the provincial banker to assist us. There was no costs and there was no formal agreement that we entered into. The formal agreements we only concluded once we were satisfied with products that were presented to us on the pension, on the medical aid, and on the funeral cover. And those also then, the question around the registration, yes, COGTA had to register with the Financial Services Conduct Board as the employer body in relation to the pension fund, and it falls within the purview of the Pension Funds Act number 24 of 1956, as well as the Income Tax Act number 58 of 1962. So those are the regulatory frameworks that through the Financial Services Conduct Authority, the fund will have to comply with. Thanks, Chair.
Just a closer. So the Amakhosi Wealth, is it Wealth Management, the PTY Limited, are you aware of who registered that? No idea. Okay. So I'm just a little bit concerned who would register a PTY Limited in that name, and the fact that this portfolio committee and your department deals with traditional leaders, perhaps we should investigate and try to find out who registered this PTY Limited in that name, and whether it has any consequences or implications to the traditional leaders. I think that's important. And if you could perhaps report back to this committee in that regard. And, I appreciate the response by the Honorable MEC in regards to the sustainability and the fact that we would cut back on other programs just to ensure that the Amakhosi pension fund is stable and paid and so on, which is concerning. Not concerning that we would do that for them, but the other concern is the cutting back. So I think that engagement with regards to this department getting a greater budget, whether it's from the province or whether National Treasury is going to take some sort of financial role towards the payment of these pension funds and the salaries of Amakhosi and so on. These are very important discussions that must happen. And like I said earlier, we would really appreciate as a portfolio committee that we have feedback in this regard, that it's not just forgotten, but it is pursued, and that there are progress reports in this regard. Because, of course, as a committee, we are concerned about, we've raised time and time again, disaster management, support to the municipalities and so on. And you've given us an explanation. We understand, we note the explanation. We are not disregarding the input that you have made, but we would like greater budget towards other programs so that we as a province are able to prepare adequately for disasters, especially that early warning system, and also provide the necessary support to municipalities. Following the Section 132 hearings, it became very clear to us as a portfolio committee that there is a lot of support that is required from municipalities and oversight as well. So there definitely is a requirement for additional budget so that we're able to better support them and also better prepare as a province for disasters. There's nothing else, honorable members. I'm going to propose that we defer the rest of the items, which relates, Honorable Kunene.
I think having listened to Honorable Chairperson, having listened to the presentation and responses by the department to all the questions that you had, it is important that we take a resolution to support this program that has been presented to us, not to note, but to support that the portfolio committee supports the extension of these benefits to traditional leaders. This is what I wanted to propose. Thank you.
Honorable Kunene, we are not voting on this, but you've proposed a resolution. Can we have a seconder to that resolution? Okay, we've got Honorable Zuma. If we could get some guidance on this, I think this resolution will be recorded. It's not something, Ms. Werner. If you could provide some guidance, this is a resolution that we will record. It's not something that needs to be voted on because we are not voting on this item. Am I correct? If you could get a mic and provide some guidance. (132) hearings that we've conducted. The staff have recorded all of the resolutions that we've put together at every municipality that we have visited, right? And then we've received responses from the departments. So I want you to take a look at those responses. Then you were also provided with a document from our budget analyst. Please take a look at that as well. One of the issues that we noted, and if you could take note of that, Dr. Krishnan, is that a number of annexures are missing. A number of annexures were not sent to us that should have been sent with the feedback that you provided. So please look into that and see where those annexures are missing or insufficient, and then please send them back through to us so that we could be in readiness for the next portfolio committee meeting. Thanks. Over to you, Ms. Benjamin.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I've just consulted with the rest of the team as well. We don't think it's necessary for a resolution. It's a matter of noting the report, and it'll be apparent from the minutes, what was have said, because a resolution will imply some sort of a follow-up, and I don't think it's required at this stage.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Benjamin. Members of the Portfolio Committee, thank you so much for your time and for the valuable inputs that you have made. Thank you, Honorable MEC, for your presence here. We really appreciate that you've taken the time to personally deal with the matter with us. And once again, my sincere apologies for the manner in which the misunderstanding. I think that I've adequately clarified my position today as the chair of the Portfolio Committee. Thank you to Dr. Joey Krishnan. Thank you to all of the officials for joining us. This meeting is adjourned.